Ukraine has accused Russia of effectively rejecting a US-backed ceasefire proposal. President Volodymyr Zelensky claims that Moscow continues to escalate the war, despite diplomatic efforts to bring an end to the fighting. The proposal, reportedly pushed by Washington, sought to establish conditions for a broader de-escalation, but Russian officials dismissed it as one-sided in favoring Ukraine's strategic interests. However, in a surprising turn of events, US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin have reportedly reached a separate agreement, a ceasefire specifically focused on protecting energy infrastructure in Ukraine. This agreement, brokered in a high-level phone conversation between Trump and Putin, aims to prevent further destruction of power plants, energy grids, and gas pipelines that have been targeted during the conflict. While Trump has framed the deal as a practical step towards stability, Ukraine remains skeptical. President Zelensky has criticized the arrangement, warning that it could allow Russia to regroup and consolidate control over occupied territories. Ukrainian officials insist that any ceasefire must also include a full withdrawal of Russian forces. The Kremlin, however, has welcomed the agreement, with Putin stating that protecting Ukraine's energy sector is in everyone's interest, including European nations that rely on energy transit routes. Russian state media is portraying the ceasefire as a diplomatic victory for Moscow, highlighting Trump's willingness to negotiate directly with Putin, rather than through traditional NATO channels. Meanwhile, European leaders have reacted with caution. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and French President Emmanuel Macron have expressed concerns over a ceasefire limited to energy infrastructure, arguing that it fails to address the broader humanitarian crisis and ongoing Russian offensives. Adding to the complexity, military analysts suggest that this ceasefire may serve as a strategic maneuver by Russia, allowing them to stabilize supply lines and redirect resources toward other fronts. While a reduction in attacks on energy infrastructure could offer temporary relief to Ukrainian citizens suffering from blackouts and energy shortages, it does little to resolve the larger conflict. Ukraine's foreign ministry has also called on the United Nations to intervene, emphasizing that a true ceasefire must encompass more than just power plants. NATO allies have echoed these concerns, urging the United States administration to ensure that any deal struck between Trump and Putin does not undermine Ukraine's sovereignty. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces on the ground continue to report heavy fighting in key regions, particularly in the Donetsk and Luhansk areas. Reports indicate that Russian artillery strikes have not ceased, despite the energy ceasefire agreement, leading many to question whether Moscow is acting in good faith. Looking ahead, all eyes remain on upcoming diplomatic meetings. The European Union has announced an emergency summit to discuss the implications of the ceasefire, and NATO officials are set to hold a closed-door session to reassess their strategy in light of recent developments. With Ukraine refusing to recognize the agreement and the US Congress yet to weigh in, questions remain. Will this partial ceasefire hold? Is this a step toward genuine peace or merely a tactical pause that benefits Russia? And most importantly, what will be the long-term consequences for Ukraine and global stability?